The internet is the most powerful and advanced technology ever put in place. It's arisen virtually in the last 5 years. The world doesn't look substantially different. Now we hear a great deal about how society is dissolving into anarchy. What it means is there is no more public consensus. No matter how bizarre your interest, you can find a community of people on the internet absolutely
who share your views,
and who are furiously advancing that agenda.
On the surface level, the internet is simply a collection of wires and computers communicating information through simple on and off states. While its initial trajectory was that as a tool to ensure military communication for and after the nuclear holocaust, its potential was not fully grasped. However, the internet in reality is more than the sum of its parts. Nowadays, you may imagine it as the nervous system of a planetary consciousness, a stepping stone towards a greater collective mind. While the internet is fragmented by design and may take different shapes, after the 2000s it became dominated by a few companies.
You can take a person and look them up and you can get a picture of how they'd like to portray themselves in addition to, say, the courses that they're taking, sports teams, clubs that they're a part of, and who their friends are at the school.
With the emergence of the Web 2.0 era in 2004, web pages were designed with the intention of fostering user-generated content and to create virtual communities.
In less than 1 year, the Facebook.com has become an addictive part of everyday college life.
The idea of social networks quickly prevailed and became a dominant form of media on the internet. While different platforms set different rules and value different forms of content, TikTok learned valuable lessons from its predecessors and quickly secured a dominant position in the modern web. Released globally as TikTok in 2017, it now ranks among the 20 most visited sites on the web, an eclectic selection of sites that is traditionally dominated by US companies like Google, Facebook and Amazon. The fact that TikTok is Chinese is significant. It marks China's confidence in challenging US hegemony in social media globally. Its concept is simple, yet it proved extraordinarily effective, taking the idea of easily digestible short-form content from sites like Twitter, leaving the realm of text-based content and moving it into the realm of video content where YouTube reigns supreme. The undercurrent of the platform, nurturing its success, is its algorithm that leverages data collection and artificial intelligence to serve content that connects to the user's emotions and preferences. However, the final ingredient to a winning formula was the radical mobile-first approach that prioritized vertical over horizontal video content. But these features are just the surface. In less than a decade, TikTok has profoundly changed not just the web, but how we consume, perceive and interact with media. So how is TikTok reshaping our perception of reality? Is it a tool accelerating our global connectedness and fostering individuality? Or a mechanism of control, distraction and division? Marshall McLuhan, one of the most influential media theorists of the 20th century, famously declared in the 60s, "The medium is the message." His groundbreaking thesis emphasized that the nature of a medium, whether print, radio, television, or today's digital platforms, shapes how we think, communicate, and perceive reality, often more profoundly than the content it conveys.
Since these forms, like press, radio, television, since these forms represent really huge extensions of our own bodies and our own nervous systems, we need a kind of ecology or equilibrium or balance among all these services. What's wrong with television is the kind of effect it has on people's nervous systems. And it's not the program that is unsettling or dangerous. It is simply the complete disruption of the human nervous system by this potent drug.
McLuhan went further, warning that media are extensions of our senses and consciousness, functioning in many ways like a drug. He argued that media set frames that shape our perceptions and behavior, creating effects that often go unnoticed. In his time, many struggled to grasp his warning, Criticism of television, the dominant new medium of the era, focused on content rather than the broader effects of TV itself.
The media are themselves a very large part of the environment, and they need to be regulated according to their kinds of effects they have on people. And the programs are very, very incidental. It doesn't much matter what shows you put on. It's the medium itself that has the big impact.
McLuhan is often cited as a prime example of an academic who is both groundbreaking and notoriously difficult to understand.
It's one of the most painful parts of understanding McLuhan is when you read his letters beginning in the early 70s and he realizes his message has not gotten through. Nobody's really listening.
What do you think is the most, I want to use the word effective, but that's not the right word, but I'm talking about television here. What has the greatest impact? Is television best when it covers an event like a space shot or the Olympics or a baseball game? Is it best when it tries to entertain with movies at night, when it tries to inform with news?
From the perspective of traditional scholarship, his work is sometimes criticized for being unclear in its definitions or lacking systematic framework. Yet McLuhan himself embraced this ambiguity, famously stating, "I am an investigator. I make probes, I have no point of view. I do not stay in one position, I do not explain, I explore." Rather than adhering to rigid methodologies, he relied on intuition to uncover patterns and effects that conventional approaches fail to see. This intuitive, exploratory approach allowed him to anticipate the rise of the internet and new media decades before they emerged, earning him a reputation as a kind of cultural prophet.
We live in an economic world in which information itself has become the main commodity. Packages and consumer goods are now a relatively minor commodity compared to just information. It means, for one thing, for example, that the computer could become the basis of a cottage economy again. You could run the world's biggest factory in a kitchen by a computer. In other words, the nature of instant speeds, telephone, telex, computer, is to decentralize all forms of management and all forms of hardware. The computer literally could run the world from a cottage.
Global village is not created by the motor car or even by the airplane. It's created by instant electronic information movement. The global village is at once as wide as the planet and as small as a little town where everybody is maliciously engaged and poking his nose into everybody else's business. The global village is a world in which you don't necessarily have harmony. You have extreme concern with everybody else's business and much involvement in everybody else's life. It doesn't necessarily mean harmony and peace and quiet, but it does mean huge involvement in everybody else's affairs. And so the global village is as big as the planet and as small as the village post office. In the age of the information explosion, all the walls go out between age groups, ethnic groups, between family groups, national groups, between economies. The walls all go out. People suddenly have to adjust themselves to this new proximity, this new interrelationship.
With McLuhan's insights as our lens, TikTok emerges as an ultimate expression of his predictions about electronic media, where immediacy, interconnectedness, and public participation are amplified to unprecedented levels. TikTok is a platform where everything happens all at once, more engaging, more connected, more condensed, and far less private than ever before. In many ways, TikTok is a manifestation of McLuhan's concept of the global village, a world where vast distances collapse into instant communication and where personal expression becomes a shared global spectacle. To truly understand its impact, we must move beyond its content and examine its effect as a medium. This brings us to the first lens of McLuhan's tetrad, enhancement. What does TikTok amplify? First and foremost, TikTok amplifies our attention and cognitive engagement. The platform is designed to capture and hold attention in a fast-paced, high-stimulus environment. Each video, often just 15 to 60 seconds long, demands immediate focus. The rapid succession of diverse content trains users to process information at an accelerated rate. This format enhances our ability to filter, prioritize, and respond to content in real time.
In a world of simultaneous information, you have basically an acoustic world, not a visual world with a point of view, not a positional world from which to look at the future or the past, but an acoustic world in which you are bombarded simultaneously by every kind of data from every direction. The space in which we live is identical with the space of pre-literate man, pre-visual man. It's acoustic space. Its properties are those of a sphere whose center is everywhere, whose margin is nowhere.
That is no boundaries. And
no center.
And no single center, but centers everywhere.
Centers everywhere, margins nowhere.
And no points of view.
And now this is the nature of electronic man lives in this kind of space because he creates this kind of space by the virtue of using his simultaneous media.
TikTok turns the act of consuming information into a fast, instinctual process, making us more adept at navigating vast amounts of data, but less inclined to linger deeply on any single idea. Beyond immediate attention, TikTok enhances our emotional and sensory connection to content. The platform's emphasis on audiovisual storytelling transcends traditional language barriers, creating a shared universal medium of expression. Music, motion, and text combine to evoke powerful emotional responses. This capacity to amplify emotional resonances fosters a deeper connection among users, enabling them to feel a part of something larger than themselves, fostering a sense of belonging. TikTok intensifies the immediacy and intimacy of these interactions, making global experiences feel personal and profoundly relatable. TikTok facilitates identity formation by connecting users with like-minded communities based on shared interests and aesthetics, yet it also makes these identities more fluid and dynamic. The platform's algorithm curates content that fosters a sense of belonging, but it also allows users to shift between groups and adopt new norms with ease. This fluidity is amplified as users engage with trends or memes, continually redefining their identities with rapidly evolving cultural contexts. TikTok therefore creates a space where identity is both collective and flexible, allowing users to explore different facets of themselves while connecting with others who share similar experiences. TikTok's algorithm enhances discoverability by prioritizing engagement over pre-existing follower counts, dissolving the gatekeeping that characterizes traditional print media, but also Western social media. This shift enhances the medium's capacity to blur the boundary between publisher and consumer, as the algorithm fosters a more immediate, participatory form of communication. By democratizing access to visibility, TikTok amplifies the notion of the global village, where content flows freely and organically, transcending traditional hierarchies of authority and allowing new voices to emerge, without the need for institutionalized channels. TikTok makes passive media consumption increasingly obsolete. Traditional forms of media like television, movies, but also streaming platforms position users as passive recipients of content created by professionals. TikTok, however, actively involves its users in the creation and circulation of content. The platform is designed to encourage participation, inviting users to remix trends, respond to challenges, or create their own interpretation of existing memes, with little effort or material barriers. Rigid programming schedules seem archaic. Linear narratives, a hallmark of traditional storytelling, are also rendered obsolete by TikTok's fragmentary and dynamic structure. Whereas films, novels, or even TV shows follow clear sequential arcs, TikTok thrives on standalone moments and loosely connected trends. Each video is self-contained, yet it exists within a broader web of shared memes, sounds, and hashtags.
There's an old saying in the business world, if it works, it's obsolete. And it's only when a thing has become obsolete that everybody is sufficiently familiar with it to make it work. Our motor cars are obsolete long ago. There is more writing today than there was before Gutenberg, more handwriting. Obsolescence does not mean the conclusion, but rather the beginning of a process, as far as everyday life is concerned. This is not ordinarily understood. Most people think obsolescence means the end. It means the beginning. People always live in obsolescent attitudes and obsolescent frames of mind and obsolescent technologies and homes. Only the artist can afford to live in the present. For that privilege, he pays a very heavy price.
The mobile-first approach of TikTok makes the idea of dedicated media consumption in fixed locations increasingly obsolete. Users no longer need to sit in front of a television in the living room or isolate themselves with a book. Instead, TikTok enables content to be consumed or produced anywhere, at any time and for any duration. TikTok also makes personal media archives, once a sign of ownership and cultural engagement, obsolete. Physical bookshelves, DVD collections, or even downloaded digital files are replaced by an algorithm-curated stream of media. The traditional reliance on experts is undermined by TikTok's egalitarian algorithm, which prioritizes engagement over credentials. On TikTok, a medical doctor discussing a disease and a random user with a hot take may compete for attention, with the algorithm favoring whichever sparks greater interaction. This flattening of authority disrupts established hierarchies of expertise, replacing them with a marketplace of ideas governed by popularity, creativity, and emotional resonance rather than formal qualifications or institutional backing.
The electric man not only lacks a private identity, he also lacks any morals, because he has no relation to natural law. Not having a body, he has no relation to natural law and therefore no morals. No morals in the ordinary sense of the word anyway. He can relate to supernatural law, but he cannot relate to natural law, which may help to account for the strange revival of religion. Discarnate man, disembodied man, cannot relate to natural religion, but he can relate to supernatural religion.
Electric technology has retrieved all the primitive cultures of the world and made them part of us. The Gutenberg technology scrapped medieval culture and retrieved antiquity. Electric technology scrapped 19th century hardware and industry and retrieved primitive societies en masse and dumped them in the Western lap. So the kids today are primitives. Without identity, without the old-fashioned private identity, they're tribal. Being tribal, role-seeking, group-oriented, they are very violent because they're being asked to fit into a highly specialized and bureaucratized and specialized world of the 19th century hangover. They can't. At electric speeds, it is impossible to fit into those specialized spots created by a slower technology.
TikTok retrieves a deeply archaic mode of human communication and cultural expression that had been diminished in the print and broadcast eras. At its core, the platform resurrects the oral, performative traditions that once defined how humans shared stories, values, and identities. Through its emphasis on short audiovisual storytelling centered around dances, songs, and emotionally charged performances, TikTok revives the right-brain-centric, intuitive, and holistic modes of communication that were dominant before the rise of the text-based media. This retrieval represents a profound shift away from the rational, linear, and text-heavy structures fostered by the dominance of print media and its intellectual offshoots. Print culture, as McLuhan argued, prioritized the left hemisphere of the brain, favoring abstraction, hierarchy, and rationality. It gave rise to structured public discourse grounded in the stability of shared text-based frameworks. It created a public through shared norms that were guarded by the gatekeepers of print media. Liberal democracy as a political system flourished under these conditions, relying on informed publics living in the same norm-guided reality, fostered by a media ecosystem built around print, and later extended by the relatively centralized structures of television broadcasting. The platform's content thrives on emotion, rhythm, and immediacy, resembling pre-literate modes of storytelling, where collective engagement was driven by shared performance and visual symbolism. Dances, memes, and viral trends function as communal rituals, creating a dynamic, participatory culture that is both immediate and deeply tribal. In doing so, TikTok reintroduces an environment where identity and meaning are fragmented, fluid, and contested. Its algorithm-driven personalization fosters micromyths tailored to specific communities or tribes, often in opposition to each other. Instead of a unified public, we see a proliferation of smaller, self-referential groups that define themselves through their opposition to outsiders. When pushed to its extremes, TikTok reverses many of the very qualities it initially seems to amplify. The platform's defining features, creativity, community, liberation from traditional hierarchies, and immediacy, can transform into unintended and often detrimental outcomes. These reversals reveal the double-edged nature of the medium and highlight the tensions embedded within its structure. The creativity that TikTok fosters, for instance, can reverse into a state of numb reproduction and self-referentiality. While TikTok initially empowers users to innovate and participate in trends, over time the platform's culture of virality can prioritize replication over originality. Popular trends are endlessly recycled, often stripped of their original context or meaning, resulting in a feedback loop where creative energy is expended not in innovation but in conforming to and slightly tweaking existing formats. The liberation from print hierarchies and traditional gatekeepers reverses into a new form of tyranny, one governed by the algorithm and perpetuated by self-censorship. While TikTok democratizes content creation, it also subjects users to the opaque logic of its algorithm, which dictates visibility, virality, and engagement. This algorithmic dominance creates a new hierarchy where success is determined not by merit or creativity, but by conformity to the platform's unseen rules. In response, users may unconsciously self-censor, tailoring their content to fit the trends, aesthetics, or behaviors that the algorithm rewards. The supposed freedom from traditional gatekeepers is replaced by a subtler yet equally pervasive form of control. TikTok's data collection, superficially aimed at enhancing personalization, reverses into a tool for unconscious influence and control. The app gathers extensive data, including users' geolocation, contact lists, search histories, and browsing behavior.
We now have the means to keep everybody under surveillance. It has become one of the main occupations of mankind, just watching other people and keeping a record of their goings-on.
And invading privacy.
Invading privacy, in fact, just ignoring it. Everybody has become porous. They got the light and the messages go right through us. As, by the way, at this moment,
right,
we are on the air, and on the air we do not have any physical body. When you're on the telephone or on radio or on TV, you don't have a physical body. You're just an image on the air. When you don't have a physical body, you're a discarnate being. You have a very different relation to the world around you. And this, I think, has been one of the big effects of the electric age. It has deprived people really of their private identity.
While Western platforms like Facebook and Twitter similarly collect vast amounts of data for profit, TikTok, being under the influence of the Chinese government, creates a unique risk. The CCP has a well-documented history of using seemingly private companies for state purposes. As a result, it becomes a powerful tool of surveillance and influence. The focus on identity and community, which TikTok amplifies, can reverse into tribalism and the demonization of outsiders. As users cluster into tightly defined bubbles, often centered around shared interests, aesthetics, or beliefs, these communities can develop an us versus them mentality. The personalization of content by TikTok's algorithm intensifies these divides, reinforcing the boundaries between groups. The enhancement of emotional content can reverse into fear-mongering, hate preaching, and dehumanization. What begins as a celebration of diversity can develop into suspicion, hostility, and even verbal or physical violence against those who are perceived as outsiders or threats to the group's identity. This dynamic mirrors the darker side of tribalism and identity politics, where cohesion within the group is sustained by excessive aggression toward those outside it.
It seems, Dr. McLuhan, that this tribal world is not friendly.
Oh no, tribal people, one of their main kinds of sport is sort of butchering each other. It's a full-time sport in tribal societies.
But I had some ideas. We got global and tribal. We were going to become
the closer you get together, the more you like each other.
Yeah.
There's no evidence of that in any situation that we've ever heard of. That when people get close together, they get more and more savagely impatient with each other.
Well, why is that? Because of the nature of man, or
his tolerance is tested in those narrow circumstances very much. Village people aren't that much in love with each other.
Finally, TikTok's high focus on immediacy and fast-paced content can reverse into attention deficits and addictive behavior. The platform's mobile-first design with emphasis on short-form content encourages rapid consumption of brief, stimulating videos, catering to short attention spans and rewarding quick dopamine hits.
At the speed of light, you lose the power of recall. Attention span gets very short and recall gets very short. So in educational terms, that's a big problem. You're dealing with students who have very little attention span and very little power of recall.
This reversal transforms immediacy from an advantage into a hindrance, undermining the cognitive and emotional capacities necessary for more balanced and deliberate forms of communication. These effects are TikTok's true message. Its content is of marginal importance. Debates in the West often highlight the differences between TikTok and its Chinese counterpart Douyin. Douyin tailors its content to Chinese audiences, emphasizing educational and skill-building material under stricter censorship, while TikTok focuses on artistic and entertainment content for global appeal.
The version that's served to Chinese consumers, called Douyin, is very different from the one available in the West.
In their version of TikTok, if you're under 14 years old, they show you science experiments you can do at home, museum exhibits, patriotism videos, and educational videos. It's almost like they recognize that technology is influencing kids' development, and they make their domestic version a spinach version of TikTok, while they ship the opium version to the rest of the world.
This argument, however, is fundamentally misguided. Douyin and TikTok as specific forms of media, as extensions of our human senses, produce the same effects regardless of the content. The medium itself is what makes the difference, with its intrinsic nature shaping perception. It enhances certain senses while suppressing others. In the West, this distinction is often overlooked because media has become so ubiquitous that its effect faded into the background, operating unconsciously. Douyin is not spinach, it's the same drug, simply taken in a different set and setting. And unlike a drug, which reflects the user's inner state, TikTok is not a mirror. Those who control its algorithm control the entire experience. To mitigate the damaging effects of this medium, we must move beyond debates about its content and confront its effects directly. It has effects on mental health, identities, social norms, political structures, and even perceived senses of reality. Only by becoming fully conscious of these effects can we begin to rebalance and counteract them.
You know, there have been dystopias based on drug intervention on aggressive behavior. You all remember Brave New World, where every time anybody raised their voice, they were given a gram of soma and told a gram is better than a dam. And so nobody ever had a thought in their head, well, that's a terrible drug, let's not introduce that. Uh-oh, the bad news is we've had it for decades. It's called television, you know. We have millions of people in larval, low-awareness lives in their little condominium apartments, just ladling this garbage into their minds. If that were a drug, we'd be up in arms. You know, if people were loaded at home with that level of mental condition, day after day after day, we would do something about it.
Edgar Allan Poe has a story called The Descent into the Maelstrom. In The Descent into the Maelstrom, Poe imagines the situation in which a sailor who has gone out on a fishing expedition is caught by not watching the turn of the tide in a huge maelstrom or whirlpool, and he sees that his boat will be sucked down into this thing. He observes that some things disappear and some things reappear. By studying the things that reappear, to which he attaches himself to one of these, he saves himself. Pattern recognition in the midst of a huge, overwhelming, destructive force is the way out of the maelstrom.
Thank you for taking the time to reflect with me today. If this resonated with you, feel free to share your thoughts or continue the conversation below. Until next time.